I'm also Massachusetts, so he spent time in New England. I've also spent, as though born and raised in Florida, 7 years in New England, doing school. And I can say this, and I think it's true, I'm one of the few people in the entire country that got through both Yale and Harvard and came out more conservative than we went in. That's not easy to do. But the whole time I was up here, I was a Red Sox fan. I rooted for the Red Sox over the Yankees, no questions asked. And I was up here when they reversed the curse in 2004. It's a huge deal when that happened. And so I've always appreciated that. Now, now a Florida guy, we have the Rays and the Marlins or whatever, so we do that. But we came up to New Hampshire in the fall, and we got to go to Boston the day before. So my wife and I, invited our kids. The girls didn't want to go. My son wanted to come. So he's 5 years old, loves sports. So we decided to do a tour of Fenway Park. So I took him, and I was showing him videos before we left. I'm a Green Monster. I'm all this other stuff. It's really, really historic and everything. And so he kind of got excited. So we're pulling up to Fenway, and we're getting ready to get out of the car. And he's like, "Daddy," I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I want to see Fenway Park. But I'm a Marlins fan. I'm not a Red Sox fan." I'm like, "Don't worry, it's fine." So fast forward to Christmas, and he had a good time. He liked it. It was fun. We got some great pictures for the family that we'll always remember. But that was it. I wasn't doing anything. So then Christmas, he gets some baseball cards. So he's opening up these packs of baseball cards, and any Marlin he would put in his special stack, and any Tampa Bay Ray he would put in his special stack. And without even me saying anything, when he came to Red Sox players, he started putting them in his special stack because he remembered the Green Monster. So I don't know what fandom, how he's going to develop as he gets older, but I just thought that was interesting that just going to Fenway Park, that made an impression even on a 5-year-old kid. So they're going to be back up here. I know he wants to come back to New Hampshire at some time very, very soon, so we're looking forward to do that. Thank you all for coming. I'm excited that we're going to get ready into the election year here just in a few more days. And I think it's going to really start to heat up. And we've got some serious issues that we've got to address in this country. And I can sum up this primary, I think, very succinctly. Donald Trump is running to address his issues. Nikki Haley is running to address her donors' issues. I'm running to address your issues and your family's issues. And that's the difference. And we have a great record to be able to talk about some of the things. Thomas mentioned during COVID, he had to take an important stand at a time when the hysteria was through the roof. And you look back at how that happened, the media whipping up, trying to scare people, which was bad enough. But then having people like Fauci who were out there trying to scare people, that is not the way you handle. You got to be cool under pressure. You got to bring a sense of calm when you have these situations, and these guys did the opposite. I remember Trump's Surgeon General would go on national television and say, we're going to have multiple Pearl Harbors a day and all this stuff. And I'm like, what kind of confidence is that doing? And everyone had always said, when you deal with pandemics, you want to lower the temperature, not raise the anxiety. And these guys totally did the opposite. So that was this environment that was created. And so they wanted to just hotline $2 trillion. Up to that point, there had never been $2 trillion spending bill in the history of the country. And they wanted to do without your representatives even showing up to vote. And so when he took that stand, he got pilloried, he got attacked. And I know because I got attacked for having schools open and all this stuff. But everything he said about that turned out to be right. He said that it would cause problems in the labor market. People would be paid not to work. They would drop out. He said it would underwrite lockdowns in blue states. And you had lockdowns on and off for a long time in this country in those states. And I know because people fled those to come to my state and live in free state of Florida. He said that it would create inflation. And that was the seeds of inflation. When you start printing money, the inflation doesn't happen right away. It takes 18 to 20 months. That's kind of textbook Milton Friedman stuff. And so they had the $2 trillion. He objected. Obviously, Trump hammered him on that, but he was right and Trump was wrong on that. And I think the question is Donald Trump hasn't been willing to do a debate. He doesn't show up and answer questions in forums like this. And is that really what you expect as the first in the nation state to have a candidate just blow off the entire process? Because I think he owes explanations. Does he regret signing this legislation? Knowing what he knows now, would he have done things differently? Does he regret? He used to brag about shutting down the country. He claims he saved millions of lives. That's not true. Does he acknowledge that he shouldn't have done that? Does he acknowledge he shouldn't have elevated Dr. Fauci? Does he acknowledge he should have fired Fauci when it was clear the emperor had no clothes? Does he acknowledge that he shouldn't have let the cities burn because of the BLM riots in the summer of 2020? Is he willing to acknowledge any of that? Would he have done anything different? He's not even answering any of those questions. He thinks he doesn't have to do that. That ultimately is not going to work for this party or for this country. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to show up at these debates. I think that's the bare minimum that you do to be able to run for anything, much less the President of the United States. But what Thomas did, he was right. What we did in Florida, we got it right, even though they were killing me in the media. Oh, how could you send kids to school? How could you have people playing golf and beaches and all this other stuff? Now no one will admit that they were on the other side of this. I debated the governor of California in November, and they were like the biggest lockdown state, and he was trying to act like California was open while Florida was not. Are you kidding me? That is revisionist history, but it just shows you that the argument, people acknowledge now, and they don't like to begrudge it. They acknowledge Thomas was right and I was right about these things. And there's only so many issues that are really pervasive throughout society. I mean, you look at this century, 9/11 and the wars, Great Recession and the financial crisis, and then COVID. Those are like the three biggest, and COVID affected so much. I think it's important that you have people that actually, when those fights were happening, that stood up and were counted. And he stood up and he was counted. I stood up and I was counted. And our state in Florida, we have actually paid down, in spite of being governor during this whole tumultuous period, we've paid down 25% of our state's total debt. From the beginning of Florida as a state to the present, I've knocked off 25% in 5 years. I mean, that's really what you should be expecting of people. We've cut taxes every year. We've run surpluses. We've grown the economy. We've also shown that the federal government and a lot of other states have bloated, ineffective bureaucracies. Florida has millions of more people than New York does now, and yet our budget is half the size of New York State's budget. Our state employees, the total number of state employees per capita, is the lowest in the entire United States. And yet, when people move from New York to Florida, what do they tell me? Oh my gosh, your infrastructure is so much better. Your services are so much better, and your education is better. And yet we're doing that with half the footprint. So much of what's being done federally with this mammoth bureaucracy is not necessary. You could do a massive reduction of the bureaucracy, and we wouldn't miss a beat for the things that we actually need this government to do. Obviously, they're spending way too much money, and you've seen problems with that. So we need to start actually having the people be in charge here, because right now we have a permanent bureaucracy that is doing things, imposing policies on us, regardless of who wins the election. And that's not the way it works. We need to be taking power out of D.C. Donald Trump actually just put out a social media post where he's saying that he wants to build a massive, expensive, brand new building for the FBI inside Washington, D.C. No, that's part of the problem with the FBI. They become overrun with D.C. politics. You need to take it out of D.C. Take power out of there. That's how you drain the swamp, not by deepening the swamp, by building multi-billion-dollar headquarters inside Washington, D.C. So I'll be there understanding there's too much power in D.C. 5 of the 8 wealthiest counties in our country are suburbs of Washington, D.C. Now, how did that happen? Are they producing such great things that somehow? No, it's all because of the connection to the government and the largesse that is done, and how this is all self-serving for the nation's ruling class. So I'm taking power out of D.C. You're going to have a reduction in the size of government, but also in the scope of government. Government's getting involved in things it has no business getting involved in. You talk about if you have a puddle on your property, that somehow that's waters of the United States and the EPA can come in. That's what Biden was trying to do. Supreme Court curtailed that. They're going to try to do more. You're talking about anti-Second Amendment, where they can just, through bureaucracy, fiat, say that having some accoutrement for a firearm is all of a sudden a felony without having Congress ever having voted on that. They can just say something you purchased legally is now all of a sudden a federal felony without any vote, just bureaucrats running amok. This is not the way that our system of government was supposed to operate. This is not what the Founding Fathers intended when they created the Constitution. I also think about the different threats that we see to freedom right now and some of the things that are bubbling up in Washington, D.C. I think one of the things that I can say in Florida, well, I can say a number of things of what we did. One, everything I promised the voters I delivered 100%, no questions asked. The people that are causing a lot of problems in our country on the political left, I'm the only Republican that's actually beaten these people time and time again. We beat the teachers union on school choice, on COVID, kids being in school during COVID, and now most recently on paycheck protection. No automatic deduction of school union dues. People can write a check or do what they want. What that has caused, that's given teachers the freedom to protect their paychecks. The number of people signing up is much lower, and unions are going to be decertified. Some of these school unions are going to be decertified, and the reason people aren't joining is because they're pursuing a partisan agenda. They're trying to use the schools to advance a political outcome. That's not the purpose of our schools, and so people now have the tools to be able to fight back. We beat Fauci on COVID. Every single thing we did, oh, you can't have schools open, you have to force masks, all the stuff we rejected, and the state's never done better as a result. We beat Soros on crime. You have these prosecutors getting elected around the country. They get elected and say they're not going to enforce laws they disagree with. You end up having more crime, inmates run the asylum, and not only are people less safe, it causes communities to collapse. San Francisco has collapsed. LA is in trouble. Philly, all these places, it all goes back. We had 2 of those prosecutors in Florida, one in Tampa, one in Orlando. I removed both of them from their posts. They're gone. We took action, we won. We beat the Democrats on election integrity. We have universal voter ID, no ballot harvesting, no Zuckerbucks, and we even have an election office that actually prosecutes violation of election law. So if you have an illegal alien vote, they get vote illegally, they get prosecuted. If you have a convicted rapist voting, they get prosecuted. People vote in 2 different states, they get prosecuted. We have much less problems now because people know that the law is going to be enforced. We beat the left in the ACLU on banning China from buying land in the state of Florida. I don't want them buying our farmland. I don't want them buying land near military bases. It's ridiculous. So we have, on issue after issue, delivered the victories that people have been asking for so many different years. And that's the thing. Leadership is not about entertainment. It's not about social media posts, or it's not about creating drama. It's about delivering results. Are you delivering results for people, or are you not? And then if you are, then you're doing your job. And that's how I see myself. I mean, during COVID, when I was getting hammered so much, a lot of my, even like friends and supporters were like, man, you need to change something because they are killing you and all this stuff and all. And I was like, you know, first of all, I think Thomas mentioned, I'm like, you got to think longer than just the next news cycle. You may get beat up for a few weeks, but what's going to happen 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years from now? That's really how you have to have the horizon. But I also thought to myself, my job is to defend the freedom and the jobs of the people I was elected to serve. I have to put that over trying to protect my own political hide. If doing the right thing ends up meaning that I suffer politically, so be it. That is the cost of leadership. It may mean you wouldn't win re-election, which we ended up winning in record fashion, but you've got to be willing to do what's right when it's not easy to do. It's easy to lead when the wind's at your back. It's a lot harder to lead when the wind's at your face, when they're firing arrows at you, when they're shooting at you. That's really the test, and we've been able to do that. So we've shown an ability to get things done and deliver really, really big results. And I think that that's something that's important because that's lacking right now, I think, in our politics. A lot of the people that run haven't produced anything. You know, if you were a governor of a state like Haley was, and you don't have a record of achievement, how are you going to then all of a sudden achieve a lot as president? I mean, are you kidding me? If you promise things like draining the swamp and building the wall like Donald Trump did, and then didn't deliver it in 4 years, how all of a sudden are you going to be able to deliver it if you could even get elected for the next 4 years? So I think we got to start focusing more on results because ultimately that is what's going to turn the country around. I mean, we're in jeopardy of being the first generation of Americans to turn over to our kids and grandkids in America that's less prosperous and less free than the one we inherited. And that's never happened in any generation of American history. And so now's the time for choosing and for us to make sure that we get this right. So where are the threats? So we've done a good job in Florida of identifying threats to freedom. With COVID, we said not only are we going to not allow this to happen, we're going to kneecap any attempt to do vaccine passports or mandates or anything. So we put permanent protections into law. We've also seen what they're doing in Washington, D.C. with the World Health Organization. So what they want to do, Biden, there's this treaty, they call it a pandemic treaty, but it's really a lockdown treaty. And what it's going to do is it would take power away from we as Americans, and it would transfer power outside of this country to the WHO, which is a corrupt bureaucracy. In Florida, we saw that they're working on that. We knew it wouldn't necessarily have the force of law because it wouldn't be ratified by the Senate, but we passed legislation protecting Floridians from that and saying that lockdown treaty will have no effect in the state of Florida, period. And our agencies are not allowed to implement it or anything. As president, on day one, I'll be able to come in, we'll take that World Health Organization lockdown treaty, rip it in half, and throw it in the trash can. It'll be done, don't worry. We're also, another thing that we've identified as a future threat is the idea of a central bank digital currency. Has anyone heard of this? I mean, how many people have heard of it? So basically what it is they want to get rid of cash, they want to get rid of cryptocurrency, and they want all transactions to be on the central bank digital currency that the Fed would operate and oversee. And they're not just doing this for your health. They're not doing this because they want to be helpful to you. They're doing it because it would be a transfer of power from consumers to a central authority. And if you think about how government operates, sometimes they'll do things that appear positive, but underneath there's really an ulterior agenda. Sometimes it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is not that. This is just a wolf that's showing up as a wolf. Because if they have supervision over your transactions, your financial privacy is gone. And then they would be able to basically turn it off and on because there's a crisis or something. And what would they do? Oh, well, to fight climate change, you're limited to how much gasoline you can use in a week. Or, you know, we're concerned about some of the guns, so you can't buy ammunition. You're buying too much ammunition. They're going to have all these different things. They'll try to impose a social credit system on this country. So the Fed is talking about doing that unilaterally. I don't think they have authority to do it. We passed legislation in Florida saying we're not recognizing this. We're not going to go down. We're going to fight back against it. That's another thing that I'll be able to protect you from in Florida as president, because on day one, I will kill the idea of a central bank digital currency in this country. You're not going to have to worry. And I'm the only one running who you can take that to the bank, because this started under Trump's administration. If you go back and look at some of the things they were working on in Treasury, Biden obviously is for it. He's pushing it. Haley's definitely going to be for it because her donors are for it, and so she would have to be for it. So I'm the only one that will guarantee we're not going to do it. Look, cash is king. Cash gives you independence. Cash gives you an ability to do things apart from having government supervision. And if you saw what Canada did when those truckers were protesting the vax mandates, they just started shutting off their bank accounts. They started doing that. That's a massive invasion of people's individual freedom and individual liberty. So we're not going to let that happen, and we'll make sure that we're able to nix that. So there's some serious things on the horizon for this country. The other thing we're going to do, and Thomas has been somebody that's been outspoken, is when government misbehaves, abuses its power, there has to be consequences. And yet we sit here today, we saw how these agencies behaved during COVID, lying to the American people, supporting ineffective policies, destructive policies, even under Biden saying, you did not have a right to work and put food on the table unless you took a COVID mRNA shot that was experimental use that had not even been fully approved. That is a massive abuse of power. And first of all, I don't think Congress would have authority to enact such a mandate, but you definitely can't just do it unilaterally through the bureaucracy. Are you kidding me? We fought back against that in Florida, and we beat Biden on that at the Supreme Court. But Nobody has been held accountable for any of this stuff. If you don't hold them accountable, they are going to do it again. So we're going to bring a reckoning to CDC, NIH, FDA. You're going to see major accountability. You're going to see a big reckoning, and we will guarantee that things like this will never happen in this country ever again. The other thing is we talk about some of these agencies like FBI, we talk about the IRS, the Department of Justice, how they're using power, going after people they don't like, and the fact that you would have parents going to school board meetings being surveilled by the FBI, obviously an abuse of power, but that didn't happen by accident. It happened because you've had presidents buy into this idea, including Republican presidents, that these are independent agencies and you can't mess around with them. They're not independent agencies. They are executive branch agencies. The only person in the executive branch elected by the American people through the Electoral College is the President of the United States. The President says he's not going to be involved in disciplining these agencies. Well, that means they're unaccountable. So they've gained a lot of power. They haven't been held accountable. And of course, human nature being what it is, the Founding Fathers would have predicted this. They're going to abuse the power. So we're going to come in, we're going to bring constitutional accountability to those agencies. If the FBI is colluding with tech companies to censor dissent, I'm going to fire those people. We are not going to put up with them going after parents. We're not going to put out the circulating memos saying Catholics are somehow dangerous potential terrorists. It's not going to happen in my administration, but it requires a president that's going to be willing to hold people accountable, and we will do that. And the other thing I'm going to do, and as a Republican, it's almost embarrassing that we've had these politicians for decades talk about this southern border. It's been a problem. I know it's bad under Biden, as bad as it's ever been, but it isn't like it was good 10 years ago. It wasn't. I mean, I remember even the Trump's first few years, there were caravans pouring in. They did it much better during COVID because they used COVID as an excuse to stop, which was good. But the first few years were not good. Obama, disaster, all this stuff. So I'll be the president to finally end the border issue in America once and for all. We're going to take swift action. We'll declare it to be a national emergency on day one. We'll mobilize resources, including the military, to be on the border. We're going to stop the invasion cold. I am going to empower states to enforce immigration law alongside the federal government. So if someone goes across the Rio Grande, Texas has the right to send them back to Mexico without having this ridiculous process that happens. So we're going to do that. And you have to have, when people come illegally, we've had 8 million under Biden, you can't just shrug your shoulders. You have to send them back to where they came from. If you're not willing to deport people out of this country who are here illegally, you're going to continue to have this problem. Donald Trump promised in 2016 the largest deportation program in history. He actually deported less than Obama did in Obama's first 4 years, if you can believe that. That's incredible that that's the case. So now he's promising that he's going to do the same thing he promised in 2016 and didn't deliver on. I don't think he'd be able to get the job done. I will get the job done. We will make sure that we do it. And not only is that going to be able to take stress off our medical system, our schools, all the public services that are just being overwhelmed in communities all across the country, it'll also serve as a deterrent in the future. People are not going to want to try to come illegally if they know they're just going to end up right back where they started to begin with. The reason why they'll pay $10,000 to a coyote to get across the border is because they know once they get across that border, they're basically home free and they don't ever have to go back. We'll change that. We are also going to build a wall across the southern border. And I think had Trump done that, as promised, I don't think Biden would have been able to let in 8 million people. The wall's a physical fact of life. I think it's effective, but it needs to be built, and you got to have funding to do it. Mexico paying for it was never going to be Mexico just handing over money. The way you do it is you impose fees on the remittances that workers send to foreign countries. So you'll have people from Mexico send money back to Mexico, Central America, all these places. It's a massive amount of money that gets sent back in remittances. Even a small fee will raise billions of dollars and be able to put that towards wall construction. So I will do that. But then maybe the most importantly, we're going to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable. because they're invading this country and they are poisoning our people in record numbers. We have tens of thousands of people dying every year in this country because of fentanyl, and it's happening in communities in every region of the country. It's not just happening on the southern border, and it's happening with a lot of young people who are not necessarily drug addicts. Maybe they try one pill thinking it's something else. If it's laced with fentanyl, that can be enough to poison them, and then they die just taking one pill. So this is happening. The people in DC shrug their shoulders. They don't give a damn about any of this. I care about it. I take it personally when people are coming in and poisoning our people. I take it personally when mothers are losing kids. And a president not only has a right, you have a responsibility to fight back. So we're going to treat them like foreign terrorist organizations, and I can tell you they are not going to like our response to them for what they're doing to our people. But it's going to make a difference, and we're going to stop this problem once and for all. So now's the time where we're getting into the election season. People are going to start to, I think, be involved in this, and I think more significant ways going forward. We're going to have the first caucus in Iowa and the first primary here in New Hampshire. You guys have a great opportunity to really change the trajectory of this country because with me as the nominee, you're going to get somebody, yes, win the election in Florida. That's the thing. Like, we all have electoral track records. I mean, you've seen some candidates underperform, and then you've seen me win overperforming in every election I've ever done, including our most recent one where we won the biggest landslide that any Republicans ever won in the state of Florida. And not just that, which is important, but we were sweeping in other Republicans all across, up and down the ballot. It's a team effort. You need people in the legislature, in the Congress, school board, up and down the ballot. We made that happen. And we've really struggled since 2016 as Republicans in many parts of this country in a lot of these elections. And I think I've shown an ability to be leading that ticket in big victory, which is important to do. But I think even more important than that is, once you get in, who's going to actually deliver on what they say they're going to deliver in? And I have a record in Florida of delivering on 100% of the promises that I made. I don't sit here and say any of this to you flippantly. There are things I could be promising that may sound good, may even win me a few more votes, but I know there's no way I'd actually be able to do it, so I don't make those promises. Everything I say I'm going to do, I've thought about how do you actually bring it in for a landing. Because unless we actually get this stuff done, we're not going to fix the trajectory of this country. We're not going to be able to reverse the decline that we're seeing unless we actually do that. So I will do that, and I'm mindful of what I owe to, I have 3 young kids, my wife and I. We want to see better for the next generation, but we also owe a debt to people that have sacrificed in previous generations for us. And our founding fathers understood freedom was fragile. Ronald Reagan used to say freedom's only one generation away from extinction. It's not passed along in the bloodstream. And I think that that's correct. And I think about, and Thomas has taken these flights in, when you go into Washington, D.C., if you fly into Reagan Airport, there's a route you can take that takes you parallel to the National Mall. So as you're coming in, if you look out the left side of the plane, you see very up close and personal the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, Washington Monument, other monuments, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building perched on the top of the hill. And you think to yourself, those are symbolic of the ideals and principles that make this country unique. And you feel a sense of pride. But after doing that trip a few times, I realized the best monuments to our country's principles were not seen out the left side of that plane on the National Mall. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw a series of small, nondescript monuments orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me then, and I believe now, you can have the best Constitution in the world, you can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. These things do not run on autopilot. They require every generation of Americans to step up and defend freedom when it's threatened, and sometimes put on a uniform, risk your life, and even give the last full measure of devotion for service to this country. Now, we're not called upon to make sacrifices of that nature, but what we are called upon to do is to do justice to the sacrifices that have been made on our behalf. What we are called upon to do is to preserve what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. This is the fire that burned in Independence Hall in 1776 when 56 men pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish a new nation conceived in liberty. It's the fire that burned at a cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, when our nation's first Republican president, an anti-slavery president, pledged this nation to a new birth of freedom. It's a fire that burned on the beaches of Normandy when a merry band of brothers stormed the shores of France, defeated Nazi Germany, and preserved liberty throughout the world. It's a fire that burned at the foot of the Berlin Wall in 1987 when a resolute Republican president stood in front of that wall and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," and eventually leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. This is our responsibility, to carry that torch and to preserve the sacred fire of liberty. It's not a responsibility I shy away from. It's a responsibility that I welcome. We should all welcome an opportunity to do our part to ensure that this nation's freedom will preserve and be stronger for future generations. As your candidate, I can pledge to you, we'll get the job done in November. It'll be a great year for Republicans. As a leader, I can pledge to you that I'll always conduct myself in a way that you can be proud of in your president. And as your president, I can promise you this, I won't let you down. We will get the job done. Thank you all. God bless. All right. Do you have any questions?